The radar signature appeared at 3:47 hours, 37,000 feet above the Pacific, moving at impossible speeds that defied conventional aircraft capabilities. NORAD's screens flickered with confusion as the contact maintained a trajectory that seemed to mock the laws of physics, weaving between established flight corridors like a ghost threading through reality itself. The object exhibited no transponder signal, no radio communication, and most disturbing of all, it demonstrated flight characteristics that suggested either experimental technology far beyond current military assets or something else entirely. Colonel Marcus Whitfield watched the primary display with narrowed eyes, his 23 years of air defense experience unable to rationalize what the systems were telling him. The bogey maintained perfect stealth characteristics while simultaneously broadcasting a radar return so clean it seemed deliberately provocative. Fighter jets scrambled from 3 separate bases received contradictory sensor readings. Some showed nothing, others painted a contact larger than a commercial airliner, while thermal imaging suggested an energy signature consistent with atmospheric plasma discharge. "Sir, the contact just executed a 90-degree turn at Mach 2.7 without deceleration," reported Technical Sergeant Rivera, her voice carrying the strained professionalism of someone witnessing something that shouldn't exist. "No aircraft can sustain those G-forces, and certainly not without leaving a debris field." The mysterious craft's behavior patterns defied every protocol in the book. It would accelerate beyond hypersonic speeds, then suddenly decelerate to near-stall velocity, hover motionless for precisely 47 seconds, and resume impossible maneuvers. Most unsettling was its apparent awareness of tracking attempts. Each time ground-based radar acquired a solid lock, the signature would fragment into multiple contacts before consolidating again miles away from its predicted position. Fighter intercepts proved equally futile. F-22 Raptors launched from Elmendorf reported visual contact that didn't match their instruments. The pilots described a craft that seemed to shift between solid matter and something resembling superheated air, its edges wavering like heat mirages while maintaining structural integrity that allowed it to perform maneuvers that should have torn any known aircraft apart. What made the situation even more perplexing was the timing. The appearance coincided with a classified test flight schedule that should have been impossible to predict or intercept. Someone or something was demonstrating intimate knowledge of highly classified operations while showcasing technology that rendered conventional air defense systems obsolete. The mystery deepened when communication intercepts revealed the craft was broadcasting on emergency frequencies using protocols that had been discontinued 15 years ago. The transmissions consisted of single words repeated at precise intervals: Spectre, protocol, authentication. These weren't random signals. They were pieces of a puzzle that someone expected the right person to solve. As dawn broke over the Pacific, the contact vanished as abruptly as it had appeared, leaving behind only questions and the unsettling realization that something was testing their defenses with surgical precision. Lieutenant Colonel Nix Kestrel had been grounded for 8 months following an incident that officially never happened. The woman who had once held the distinction of being the youngest pilot to achieve ace status in modern warfare now spent her days behind a desk, reviewing flight training protocols, and trying to forget the feeling of pulling 9GS in a vertical climb, while enemy missiles painted contrails behind her aircraft. Her hands still remembered the precise pressure required to execute a split-S maneuver at 500 feet above deck muscle memory that no amount of administrative duties could erase. The summons to Whitfield's office arrived without explanation, carried by a stone-faced aide who avoided eye contact and spoke only in clipped affirmatives. Kestrel had expected another performance review, perhaps discussion of her pending transfer to a training command where her skills could be safely buried in curriculum development. Instead, she found herself staring at radar plots that made her pulse quicken with recognition. "Tell me what you see, Colonel," Whitfield said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had run out of conventional explanations. The displays showed flight patterns that danced between chaos and precision, a signature that seemed to mock traditional aerospace engineering while demonstrating capabilities that shouldn't exist. Kestrel studied the data with the focused intensity that had made her legendary among those who had flown with her. Her eyes traced the impossible maneuvers, noting details that others had missed, the precise timing of each course change, the mathematical relationship between acceleration and deceleration phases, the deliberate nature of what appeared to be random behavior. "This isn't random," she said finally, her voice carrying the quiet confidence that had once commanded respect in briefing rooms across 3 continents. "Someone's running a pattern recognition test. They're waiting for someone to understand what they're doing." The admission hung in the air like smoke from a crash site. Whitfield had suspected as much, but hearing it from someone with Kestrel's background confirmed his worst fears. The mysterious craft wasn't just demonstrating superior technology. It was actively probing for specific knowledge, testing whether anyone on their side possessed the expertise to decode its intentions. "The engine vibration signature," Kestrel continued, pointing to a subsection of the data that had been overlooked by previous analysts. "It matches something I've seen before, but that's impossible. Those protocols were classified beyond top secret and the only people who knew them." She trailed off, realization dawning in her eyes. "Are either dead or grounded," Whitfield finished grimly. The implication was clear. Someone was using knowledge that should have died with the pilots who possessed it, turning their own secrets against them in a game where the rules were written by an adversary who understood their capabilities better than they understood themselves. The morning briefing revealed the full scope of the crisis. Radar installations across the Pacific had tracked similar contacts over the past 72 hours, each appearance following a pattern that suggested systematic probing of air defense networks. The mysterious aircraft demonstrated knowledge of radar gaps, communication protocols, and response times that indicated either a massive intelligence breach or something far more disturbing. Kestrel sat in the back row of the briefing room, feeling the weight of sideways glances from colleagues who remembered her reputation, but questioned her current status. The grounding had been necessary, officially for insubordination, unofficially for surviving a mission that had cost 3 other pilots their lives and raised questions about classified projects that weren't supposed to exist. General Patricia Hawthorne commanded the briefing with the clinical precision of someone accustomed to dealing with impossible situations. The slides she presented painted a picture of a technological threat that challenged fundamental assumptions about aerial warfare. The mysterious contacts weren't just evading detection, they were rewriting the rules of engagement in real time. "The craft demonstrate capabilities that exceed our most optimistic projections for next-generation fighter development," Hawthorne explained, her laser pointer highlighting trajectory data that seemed to defy orbital mechanics. "They execute maneuvers that would liquefy human pilots, sustain speeds that should melt conventional airframes, and demonstrate stealth characteristics that render our tracking systems partially blind." The assembled officers absorbed this information with the grim professionalism of people trained to confront the impossible. But Kestrel noticed details that others missed. The slight tremor in Hawthorne's voice when discussing stealth characteristics, the way she avoided eye contact during certain portions of the briefing, the careful phrasing that suggested classified details were being deliberately omitted. "The most concerning aspect isn't their technology," Hawthorne continued. "It's their apparent knowledge of our capabilities. These incursions are timed to coincide with scheduled maintenance windows for our most sensitive surveillance platforms. They exploit geographical dead zones in our radar coverage with precision that suggests intimate knowledge of our defensive posture." The implications were staggering. Someone was using their own defensive weaknesses against them, demonstrating capabilities that rendered conventional interception impossible while showcasing intelligence that had to come from inside sources. The mysterious craft weren't just superior. They were using American military knowledge to highlight American military vulnerabilities. As the briefing concluded, Kestrel felt the familiar sensation that had preceded every significant mission of her career. The recognition that she was about to be asked to attempt something that regulations explicitly prohibited and survival statistics strongly discouraged. The secure conference room felt smaller than its actual dimensions, architectural claustrophobia enhanced by the weight of classified discussions, and the presence of officials whose names didn't appear on any public roster. Kestrel found herself seated across from individuals whose credentials she could only guess at, their civilian attire failing to mask the military bearing that marked them as players in games where the stakes transcended traditional warfare. "Colonel Kestrel," began a woman whose identification badge listed only a first initial and a clearance level that Kestrel had never seen before. "Your service record includes experience with projects that officially don't exist. We need to discuss aircraft that officially don't exist pursuing objectives that officially don't exist." The careful phrasing was familiar, the linguistic dance performed when discussing operations that existed in the spaces between acknowledged reality and classified necessity. Kestrel had participated in enough such briefings to understand that she was being recruited for something that would either resurrect her career or ensure that her service record would be permanently sealed in archives that civilian oversight would never access. The presentation that followed challenged everything she thought she knew about aerospace engineering and operational security. The mysterious contacts weren't random intrusions. They were systematic probes designed to test specific response protocols while demonstrating capabilities that suggested technological advancement beyond current understanding. More disturbing was the evidence that these probes were being conducted by someone with intimate knowledge of classified American aerospace projects. "The engine vibration signatures you identified match a project-designated Blackout protocol," the unnamed official continued. "That project was terminated 15 years ago following an incident that killed 6 test pilots and raised questions about the psychological effects of sustained high-G maneuvering at extreme altitudes." Kestrel's blood ran cold. Blackout Protocol had been her first classified assignment, a program designed to test human limits in experimental aircraft that pushed the boundaries of what biology could survive. The pilots who participated had been carefully selected for specific psychological profiles and physiological characteristics that made them capable of operating in conditions that would incapacitate ordinary aviators. The termination was incomplete, the official admitted. 2 prototype aircraft were never accounted for, along with test data that included detailed psychological profiles of participating pilots. "We now believe those assets have been compromised and are being used to test our current defensive capabilities." The revelation hit Kestrel like high-altitude decompression. Someone was using her own past against the present, turning classified projects she had helped develop into weapons aimed at the country she had sworn to defend. The mysterious contacts weren't foreign intrusions. They were ghosts of American innovation, resurrected and repurposed for purposes that remained terrifyingly unclear. Major Elena Vasquez had been tracking the anomalous contacts for 3 weeks before the official briefings began. Her responsibilities as a signals intelligence analyst requiring her to monitor communications across multiple classified frequencies, while maintaining operational security that prevented her from discussing her findings with colleagues who lacked appropriate clearances. The patterns she discovered kept her awake at night. Mathematical relationships between the mysterious aircraft's behavior and archived signal intelligence that suggested connections to programs she wasn't supposed to know existed. The breakthrough came when she cross-referenced engine vibration signatures with acoustic intelligence gathered during the Korean conflict, comparing contemporary readings with classified recordings from experimental aircraft that had been tested under conditions of absolute secrecy. The matches were precise, not similar, but identical down to frequency modulations that should have been unique to specific airframes and powerplant configurations. "It's impossible," she had told her supervisor, a career intelligence officer whose skepticism had been worn down by 3 decades of confronting situations that defied rational explanation. "These signatures match aircraft that were destroyed or decommissioned years ago. We're seeing acoustic fingerprints from planes that don't exist anymore." The supervisor had reviewed her analysis with the methodical attention to detail that separated competent intelligence officers from those who allowed assumptions to compromise operational effectiveness. The evidence was undeniable. The mysterious contacts were broadcasting engine signatures that matched classified test aircraft from programs that had been terminated under circumstances that remained classified even within the intelligence community. Vasquez's investigation revealed additional disturbing connections. The timing of the mysterious appearances coincided with personnel changes at installations where Blackout protocol veterans had been stationed. Former test pilots who had participated in classified programs were being reassigned, transferred, or in some cases, simply vanishing from personnel rosters without explanation. "Someone is systematically locating people who have specific knowledge," Vasquez reported during a briefing that included officials from agencies whose existence wasn't publicly acknowledged. "They're not just stealing technology, they're collecting human intelligence assets who understand how that technology was intended to be used." The implications were staggering. The mysterious aircraft weren't just displaying superior capabilities. They were being operated by individuals who possessed intimate knowledge of American test programs and the psychological profiles of pilots who had participated in those programs. Someone was using that knowledge to identify and potentially compromise current military personnel who might be vulnerable to recruitment or coercion. Kestrel's name appeared on every list of potentially compromised personnel, her participation in Blackout protocol making her both a valuable intelligence asset and a potential security risk that required careful management. The flight suit felt alien after 8 months of civilian clothes, synthetic fabric carrying the scent of aviation fuel and machine oil that triggered memories of missions that couldn't be discussed and aircraft that officially didn't exist. Kestrel performed her pre-flight inspection with the methodical precision that had kept her alive through encounters that pushed both aircraft and pilot beyond design specifications, her hands automatically checking systems, while her mind processed the briefing materials that had been classified beyond her previous clearance level. The modified F-22 Raptor, designated for the mission, incorporated technologies that blurred the line between experimental and operational, upgrades that allowed it to approach the performance characteristics demonstrated by the mysterious contacts without completely sacrificing the physiological safety of its pilot. The modifications had been developed in response to lessons learned from encounters with aircraft that shouldn't exist. Adaptations that acknowledged American air superiority was no longer guaranteed. "Your call sign for this mission is Wraith," the mission commander informed her during the final briefing. "Radio silence will be maintained except for emergency communications. Your objective is observation and documentation. Under no circumstances are you to attempt interception or engagement." The restrictions were sensible from a safety perspective, but frustrated Kestrel's pilot instincts. She had been trained to engage threats, not observe them from safe distances, while they demonstrated capabilities that rendered conventional tactical doctrine obsolete. The modified Raptor was capable of matching some of the mysterious aircraft's performance, but engaging an opponent whose full capabilities remained unknown represented an unacceptable risk to both pilot and valuable intelligence. The takeoff felt like awakening from hibernation, engines producing thrust that pushed Kestrel back into her ejection seat, while systems she had missed whispered their electronic poetry of navigation, communication, and targeting data. The cockpit displays painted a three-dimensional picture of airspace that extended far beyond visual range, showing her position relative to other aircraft while maintaining the electronic invisibility that made the F-22 the most effective air superiority fighter ever developed. Climbing through 40,000 feet, Kestrel felt the familiar sensation of leaving the Earth behind, ascending into an environment where human survival depended entirely on technology and training, while atmospheric pressure dropped to levels that would kill within seconds without pressurization. The sky above changed from blue to deep purple, to the star-scattered black of high-altitude flight, celestial navigation becoming possible as Earthbound reference points disappeared below cloud cover. The mission parameters required her to patrol a specific corridor where previous contacts had appeared, maintaining altitude and heading that would position her to observe without compromising her own stealth characteristics. The waiting was the hardest part, suspended in three-dimensional space while scanning for something that might not appear, maintaining readiness for an encounter that could develop faster than human reflexes could process. At 8:23 hours, her threat warning system detected the first anomalous signature. The contact appeared without warning, materializing on her displays like a digital ghost, transitioning from transparency to solid threat assessment in milliseconds that stretched into subjective hours, as Kestrel's training processed information that challenged everything she understood about aerial warfare. The bogey maintained position 37 miles to her northeast, altitude varying between 41 and 43,000 feet, in oscillations that suggested either unstable flight characteristics or deliberate pattern implementation. Her radio crackled with encrypted transmissions from ground control, voices maintaining professional calm while discussing a situation that challenged fundamental assumptions about air defense and technological superiority. The mysterious aircraft was broadcasting on frequencies that had been classified for military use only, using authentication protocols that should have been impossible for foreign agents to obtain. Wraith, this is Control. We're painting a contact at bearing 047, range 37 miles, altitude variable. Advise if you have visual or electronic contact. Kestrel adjusted her sensor array to focus on the indicated bearing, passive systems providing detailed analysis, without broadcasting her own position to the mysterious aircraft. The readings defied conventional aircraft signatures, engine emissions that suggested propulsion systems operating on principles that hadn't been declassified, stealth characteristics that exceeded theoretical projections for next-generation fighters, and most disturbing, flight patterns that indicated the pilot was operating under G-forces that should have caused unconsciousness or death. Control, Wraith. Negative visual contact, but I'm showing electronic signature consistent with previous reports. This contact is not following standard flight patterns. The understatement was intentional. The mysterious aircraft was executing maneuvers that violated basic principles of aerodynamics while maintaining structural integrity that suggested either revolutionary materials science or fundamental misunderstanding of what she was observing. Banking angles that should have stalled any conventional aircraft, acceleration profiles that should have exceeded human tolerance, and most unnervingly, apparent awareness of her presence despite her stealth systems. Wraith, maintain observation distance and continue monitoring. Do not approach within 20 miles of the contact. The restriction was prudent but frustrating. From her current position, Kestrel could observe the mysterious aircraft's behavior patterns, but not gather detailed intelligence about its construction or propulsion systems. She was watching a demonstration of capabilities that rendered her own aircraft's advantages marginal, observing technology that suggested American air superiority was no longer guaranteed. The contact began moving in her direction. Distance closed with mechanical precision, that suggested either automated navigation or pilot skills that exceeded her own considerable capabilities. The mysterious aircraft approached at constant velocity while maintaining altitude exactly matched to her own, behavior that indicated detailed knowledge of her position, despite stealth systems that should have rendered her invisible to conventional detection methods. Kestrel's heart rate increased as training and experience processed implications that challenged everything she understood about air-to-air engagement. The approaching aircraft wasn't behaving like a hostile contact-seeking engagement. It was approaching like a colleague seeking communication, maintaining relative position and flight characteristics that suggested familiarity with standard military protocols. Her threat warning systems remained silent despite the approaching contact, electronic warfare systems detecting no targeting radars or weapons guidance signals. Whatever was approaching possessed capabilities that rendered conventional threat assessment obsolete, while demonstrating restraint that suggested either non-hostile intentions or confidence in superiority that made aggression unnecessary. Control, Wraith. Contact is approaching my position. Recommend I maneuver to maintain observation distance. Negative, Wraith. Maintain current heading and altitude. Do not take evasive action unless directly threatened. The orders defied every tactical instinct Kestrel had developed during her career, requiring her to remain passive, while an unknown aircraft with superior capabilities approached within engagement range. She could feel her pulse in her throat, physiological responses, to stress that no amount of training could completely suppress while suspended in an environment where split-second decisions determined survival. The mysterious aircraft settled into formation position on her starboard wing, maintaining precise relative distance and altitude that demonstrated airmanship skills that matched or exceeded her own. At this range, she could observe details that radar hadn't revealed, aircraft configuration that seemed familiar despite technologies that shouldn't exist, pilot movements that suggested human operation despite G-forces that should have caused incapacitation. Through her cockpit window, she could see the other pilot turning to look at her aircraft. The figure in the other cockpit raised a gloved hand in the traditional aviator's greeting, gesture carrying implications that challenged everything Kestrel thought she understood about the situation. The mysterious aircraft that had been terrorizing air defense networks across the Pacific was being piloted by someone who understood military protocol and demonstrated respect for professional courtesies that transcended national boundaries. Control, Wraith. I have visual contact with the pilot. Individual appears to be wearing standard flight equipment and is demonstrating recognition of my presence. Copy, Wraith. Continue observation and report any additional developments. The understatement was staggering. She was flying formation with an aircraft that demonstrated capabilities beyond current technology while being operated by someone who understood tactical flying and military protocol. This wasn't foreign intrusion. It was something far more complex and potentially more dangerous. The other pilot began hand signals that Kestrel recognized from her training in nonverbal communication protocols used when radio silence was mandatory. Simple gestures that conveyed complex tactical information, a shared language that indicated common training background and understanding of operational procedures that should have been known only to American military aviators. The signals indicated a request to follow, gestures pointing toward coordinates that would take them beyond the patrol area, where ground-based radar could maintain tracking. The other pilot was requesting a private meeting in airspace, where their conversation wouldn't be monitored by authorities from either side of this increasingly complex situation. Kestrel's training demanded that she refuse such requests and maintain her assigned patrol pattern while continuing to observe from safe distance. But her instincts, developed through years of combat operations, where survival often required decisions that contradicted regulations, suggested that this might be her only opportunity to understand what was happening and who was responsible. The other pilot repeated the hand signals with emphasis that indicated urgency, then added gestures that included Kestrel's old call sign from operations that officially didn't exist. Someone knew her background with classified programs and was using that knowledge to establish credibility while requesting a meeting that could provide answers to questions that were consuming intelligence resources across multiple agencies. Control, this is Wraith. Contact Pilot is demonstrating knowledge of classification levels that should be impossible for foreign agents to obtain. Request permission to maintain closer observation. Negative Wraith. Maintain current distance and continue monitoring. Do not deviate from assigned patrol parameters. The formal denial was expected, but Kestrel could hear uncertainty in the controller's voice that suggested higher authorities were debating options that extended beyond standard operating procedures. The situation was unprecedented, requiring decisions that balanced operational security against intelligence-gathering opportunities, while acknowledging that conventional tactical doctrine might not apply to aircraft that exceeded conventional performance parameters. The mysterious pilot seemed to understand her dilemma, maintaining formation position, while demonstrating patience that suggested military training and understanding of command structures that required subordinates to follow orders, even when circumstances suggested alternative approaches might be more effective. But the hand signals continued, conveying information that indicated knowledge of Blackout protocol and other classified programs that should have been known only to individuals with security clearances that extended beyond top secret. Eventually, the other pilot pointed to their own aircraft, then made gestures indicating American origin, followed by signals that requested understanding rather than immediate compliance. The message was clear. This wasn't foreign intrusion but domestic operation that existed outside normal command structures for reasons that required face-to-face explanation. Kestrel made a decision that would define the remainder of her career. Breaking radio silence violated explicit orders and potentially compromised operational security, but Kestrel's experience with classified operations had taught her that sometimes regulations prevented understanding that was necessary for mission success. She switched to a frequency that wasn't monitored by standard communication protocols, knowing that her transmission would be recorded, but hoping that the other pilot would understand the risk she was taking. Unknown aircraft, this is Colonel Kestrel. Identify yourself and state your intentions. The response came immediately, transmitted on the same frequency with voice characteristics that seemed familiar despite electronic distortion, designed to prevent identification. Kestrel, this is someone who knows why you were grounded and why Blackout protocol was terminated. We need to discuss threats that your current command structure isn't prepared to acknowledge. The voice carried authority that suggested senior military rank and operational experience that matched her own background. More disturbing was the implication that the mysterious aircraft was being operated by American personnel, conducting unauthorized operations for purposes that remained unclear. State your call sign and unit designation, Kestrel demanded, maintaining professional protocol despite growing awareness that she was participating in a situation that existed outside normal command structures. Call sign Phoenix. Unit designation doesn't exist anymore, just like Blackout protocol doesn't exist anymore. But the threats we were designed to counter are still developing, and your current intelligence assessments are missing critical information. The name Phoenix triggered memories from classified briefings that had discussed test pilots who had participated in programs that pushed the boundaries of human survival, while evaluating aircraft that incorporated technologies derived from sources that couldn't be publicly acknowledged. Phoenix had been one of the most capable pilots in Blackout protocol, specializing in extreme altitude operations that tested both aircraft capabilities and pilot endurance under conditions that exceeded conventional training parameters. Phoenix was declared killed in action following a test flight accident, Kestrel responded. Aircraft and pilot were never recovered. Aircraft and pilot were recovered by people who understood that some threats require responses that exist outside official channels. The accident was staged to provide cover for operations that your current command structure would consider impossible and probably illegal. The implications were staggering. Blackout protocol hadn't been terminated. It had been moved beyond official oversight, continuing operations with aircraft and personnel who had been officially declared lost, while pursuing objectives that remained classified beyond the clearance levels of people currently making policy decisions about national security. "What threats are you referring to?" Kestrel asked, knowing that she was already too committed to this conversation to withdraw without understanding what Phoenix represented and why Blackout Protocol aircraft were now testing American air defenses. Threats that were identified during Blackout Protocol testing, but couldn't be addressed through normal channels, because acknowledging them would require admitting that some of our aerospace capabilities were derived from sources that official policy doesn't recognize. The careful phrasing indicated discussion of topics that extended beyond conventional classification levels, suggesting that Blackout Protocol had uncovered evidence of technological development that challenged fundamental assumptions about aerospace engineering, and potentially about humanity's place in a universe where advanced technology might have origins that extended beyond terrestrial development. Phoenix's aircraft began a gradual turn toward coordinates that would take them beyond current radar coverage. Invitation clear despite the risks involved in following an unauthorized contact into airspace, where ground control would lose tracking capability. Kestrel faced a decision that would either provide answers to questions that were consuming intelligence resources or compromise her career, and potentially her life, by trusting someone who claimed to represent operations that officially didn't exist. The decision felt inevitable, driven by pilot instincts that had kept her alive through encounters that challenged both aircraft performance and human endurance. Phoenix represented answers to questions that were becoming more urgent as mysterious contacts continued to probe American air defenses, while demonstrating capabilities that suggested technological development beyond current understanding. "Control, this is Wraith. I'm experiencing communication difficulties and need to adjust heading to maintain stable transmission. We'll continue monitoring assigned frequency." The lie was professionally phrased but transparent to anyone with experience in air operations. Ground control would understand that she was choosing to follow the mysterious contact, despite explicit orders to maintain distance, decision that would either provide crucial intelligence or end her career, depending on what she discovered during an unauthorized meeting that might represent her only opportunity to understand what was happening. Following Phoenix into unmonitored airspace felt like stepping through a portal into operations that existed in the spaces between official acknowledgement and classified necessity. The modified Raptor performed flawlessly as Kestrel adjusted heading and altitude to match Phoenix's flight path, engines providing thrust that pushed her deeper into a situation that challenged everything she thought she understood about military protocol and national security. The coordinates Phoenix had indicated led to a valley system in the Olympic Mountains, where radar coverage was limited by terrain features, and electronic surveillance was complicated by atmospheric conditions that interfered with standard monitoring equipment. It was the perfect location for a meeting that couldn't be officially observed, airspace where conversations could occur without oversight from authorities who might lack appropriate clearance levels for topics that extended beyond conventional classification systems. Phoenix's aircraft began descending toward an altitude that would position them below most surveillance capabilities, while maintaining sufficient elevation for sustained flight. The maneuver required precise navigation and understanding of local atmospheric conditions that suggested familiarity with this particular location, and possibly regular use of these coordinates for meetings that couldn't occur at official installations. As they descended through cloud cover that provided additional concealment from visual observation, Kestrel could observe Phoenix's aircraft in greater detail. The airframe appeared to be based on technology similar to her own modified Raptor, but incorporated modifications that exceeded the capabilities of her own aircraft. Engine configurations that suggested propulsion systems operating on principles that hadn't been declassified, stealth characteristics that rendered conventional detection methods partially ineffective, and most unnervingly, structural modifications that indicated operation under stress loads that would destroy standard airframes. Kestrel, maintain current altitude and heading. We're approaching a location where we can discuss topics that require privacy from official oversight. The phrase privacy from official oversight carried implications that challenged fundamental assumptions about military chain of command and civilian control of military operations. Phoenix was suggesting that some operations existed outside normal command structures for reasons that required face-to-face explanation, activities that might be necessary for national security, but couldn't be conducted through official channels. The valley they approached contained evidence of activities that weren't reflected in any official records, runway markings that indicated regular aircraft operations, support facilities that suggested permanent installation, despite absence from satellite surveillance databases, and most unnervingly, other aircraft that appeared to incorporate technologies similar to Phoenix's modifications. Kestrel was approaching a facility that officially didn't exist, operated by personnel who officially didn't exist, conducting missions that officially didn't exist for purposes that remained classified beyond the clearance levels of people, currently making policy decisions about threats that might exceed conventional understanding. The landing approach required skills that tested Kestrel's capabilities as a pilot, navigating terrain features that provided concealment, while executing maneuvers that challenged both aircraft performance and human endurance. Phoenix demonstrated airmanship that exceeded her own considerable abilities, executing approaches that seemed to ignore conventional limitations while maintaining safety margins that indicated extensive experience with this particular facility. The runway appeared to be carved into mountainous terrain with precision that suggested military engineering capabilities applied to construction that couldn't appear in official records. Support facilities were positioned to minimize visual signature from aerial observation, while providing necessary infrastructure for aircraft operations that required maintenance capabilities for technology that extended beyond standard military systems. As her modified Raptor touched down on tarmac that absorbed sound and minimized thermal signature, Kestrel realized she was entering a world that existed parallel to official military operations, facility that supported activities that might be necessary for national security, but couldn't be acknowledged through normal channels, without compromising operational effectiveness and potentially revealing information that official policy required to remain classified. Ground personnel who approached her aircraft wore uniforms without identifying insignia, professional bearing indicating military training, while anonymity suggested operations that couldn't be connected to specific branches or units. Their movements demonstrated familiarity with aircraft similar to hers, handling procedures that indicated regular experience with technology that officially remained experimental. Phoenix's aircraft had already been positioned near maintenance facilities that appeared capable of supporting technologies that exceeded standard aerospace engineering, equipment and personnel, suggesting capabilities that weren't available at official installations. The facility represented investment of resources and expertise that couldn't have been developed without official support despite its existence outside normal command structures. As Kestrel shut down her engines and began post-flight procedures, she could see Phoenix approaching across the tarmac, flight suit and equipment appearing standard despite aircraft capabilities that exceeded conventional performance parameters. The approaching figure moved with confidence that suggested senior rank and operational experience that matched her own background, bearing that indicated leadership responsibilities for operations that couldn't be officially acknowledged. The face that Phoenix revealed after removing flight helmet was familiar from classified briefings and official photographs that had been archived following a test flight accident that had been reported as fatal. Major Diana Thorne had been one of the most capable pilots in Blackout protocol, specializing in extreme altitude operations while evaluating aircraft that incorporated technologies that couldn't be publicly acknowledged. "Hello, Kestrel," Thorne said, voice carrying warmth that transcended the professional distance required by military protocol. "Thank you for taking the risk to meet with me. We have information that your current command structure needs to understand, but first I need to explain why Blackout protocol was never really terminated." The facility's briefing room resembled standard military conference spaces, except for the absence of identifying material that would indicate official acknowledgement or oversight. Maps and displays showed global threat assessments that extended beyond conventional military analysis, incorporating data sources that suggested intelligence-gathering capabilities that weren't available through standard channels. Thorne's presentation challenged everything Kestrel thought she understood about aerospace development and national security. Blackout protocol hadn't been terminated following test flight accidents. It had been moved beyond official oversight after discovering evidence of technological capabilities that exceeded current understanding, while suggesting threats that required responses outside normal military doctrine. The accidents were staged to provide cover for continued operations, Thorne explained, displaying flight data that showed deliberate execution of maneuvers designed to simulate aircraft loss while actually transitioning to classified facilities where testing could continue without official oversight. "We discovered that some aerospace technologies we were evaluating had been developed using principles that official policy couldn't acknowledge." The careful phrasing indicated discussion of topics that extended beyond conventional classification levels, suggesting that Blackout protocol had uncovered evidence of technological development that challenged fundamental assumptions about human aerospace capabilities. The implications were staggering. American military technology might have been enhanced using knowledge that couldn't be publicly revealed without compromising operational effectiveness or raising questions that official policy wasn't prepared to address. "What kind of principles?" Kestrel asked, although she suspected the answer would challenge her understanding of aerospace engineering and possibly her understanding of humanity's technological development. "Principles derived from analysis of recovered materials that demonstrated capabilities exceeding current human aerospace development," Thorne replied, her voice carrying the weight of someone who had been forced to acknowledge realities that challenged conventional understanding. "We were tasked with developing countermeasures against technologies that might be deployed against American interests by adversaries who possessed capabilities we couldn't match through conventional development." The revelation hit Kestrel with the force of high-altitude decompression. Blackout protocol had been developing responses to threats that exceeded current understanding of technological possibilities, preparing for conflicts that might involve capabilities that challenged fundamental assumptions about aerospace engineering and military doctrine. "Are you saying that American aerospace development has been enhanced using technologies that weren't developed by American engineers?" Kestrel asked, knowing that the answer might force her to reconsider everything she thought she understood about her own career and the aircraft she had piloted during classified operations. "I'm saying that some of the capabilities you've demonstrated during your service career were made possible by technologies that were developed using knowledge that official policy requires to remain classified," Thorne replied. And now, those capabilities are being tested by adversaries who possess similar technologies and understand their limitations better than current military leadership realizes. Thorne's explanation continued for 2 hours, revealing the scope of operations that had continued beyond official oversight, while developing capabilities that might be necessary for national security, but couldn't be acknowledged through normal channels. The facility where they met was one of several installations that supported aircraft and personnel who had been officially declared lost, while continuing missions that extended beyond conventional classification levels. The contacts that have been probing American air defenses are being conducted by similar operations from other nations that develop their own responses to threats that exceed conventional understanding, Thorne explained. They're testing our current capabilities against technologies that were derived from the same sources as our own advanced systems. The global implications were staggering. Multiple nations had developed aerospace capabilities using knowledge that couldn't be publicly acknowledged, creating a shadow arms race that existed parallel to official military development, while preparing for conflicts that might involve technologies that exceeded current understanding of what was possible. "Why are you telling me this?" Kestrel asked, although she suspected that her background with Blackout protocol and her current grounding made her uniquely positioned to understand information that might be too dangerous for people without appropriate experience to process. "Because the probing activities are escalating towards something that current military leadership isn't prepared to address," Thorne replied. "We need people with your background to help develop responses that can be implemented through official channels while maintaining operational security for capabilities that can't be publicly acknowledged." The request was clear despite careful phrasing. Kestrel was being recruited to serve as a bridge between operations that existed outside official oversight and current military leadership that lacked knowledge of capabilities that might be necessary for confronting threats that exceeded conventional understanding. The weight of decision pressed against Kestrel's consciousness like high-altitude pressure differential, forcing her to choose between career security and operational necessity, while acknowledging that her choice might determine whether American air defenses could adapt to challenges that rendered conventional tactical doctrine obsolete. Thorne's revelations had transformed abstract policy discussions into immediate operational requirements that demanded responses exceeding current military capabilities. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" Kestrel inquired, knowing that her answer would commit her to operations that might exist outside legal oversight while serving national security interests that couldn't be addressed through standard channels. "Help us prepare official military leadership for threats they don't understand while maintaining operational security for capabilities that can't be publicly acknowledged," Thorne replied. "The probing activities we've been tracking are preliminary to something larger, something that will require coordination between official operations and capabilities that exist outside normal command structures." The facility around them represented years of development that had occurred without official oversight, resources and expertise that suggested support from sources within government that possessed authority to authorize operations beyond standard military protocols. The aircraft, personnel, and technologies present exceeded what could be developed through normal procurement processes, indicating access to funding and materials that originated from classified sources. "There are 12 similar facilities across North America," Thorne continued, displaying a map that showed installations positioned to provide comprehensive coverage of continental airspace while remaining invisible to standard surveillance systems. Each supports aircraft and personnel who have been officially declared lost while continuing operations that prepare for scenarios that current threat assessments don't acknowledge. The scope of the shadow operations was breathtaking. Hundreds of pilots and support personnel conducting missions that existed parallel to official military activities, while developing capabilities that might be necessary for conflicts involving technologies that exceeded conventional understanding. The investment represented billions of dollars and years of development that had occurred without congressional oversight or public awareness. "How long have these operations been continuing?" Kestrel asked, trying to comprehend the timeline required for developing infrastructure and capabilities of this magnitude, while maintaining absolute secrecy from oversight agencies and potentially from senior military leadership. 15 years since official termination of Blackout Protocol, but the underlying programs have existed in various forms since the late 1940s, Thorne replied. Each generation of technology has required new responses to threats that evolve faster than official acknowledgement and procurement processes can address. The historical continuity was staggering. Shadow operations that had existed for decades, adapting to changing threats while maintaining operational security that prevented public awareness of activities that might be necessary for national security, but couldn't be conducted through normal channels. Kestrel was being invited to join operations that represented institutional memory spanning multiple generations of aerospace development. The conversation was interrupted by communication from facility operations, encrypted transmissions indicating increased activity by contacts that matched the signatures they had been discussing. The probing activities that had prompted Kestrel's initial mission were escalating towards something that required immediate response from both official and unofficial capabilities. "It's beginning," Thorne said, her voice carrying the weight of someone who had been preparing for this moment through years of classified operations. "The preliminary testing is complete. Now they're going to demonstrate capabilities that will force official acknowledgement of threats that current policy isn't prepared to address." Emergency protocols activated throughout the facility as personnel prepared for operations that couldn't be officially acknowledged, while supporting official military responses to threats that exceeded conventional understanding. Aircraft that officially didn't exist prepared for missions that officially weren't happening, while maintaining coordination with official units that lacked knowledge of the full scope of capabilities available for confronting unprecedented challenges. Kestrel found herself at the center of operations that bridged official and unofficial responses to situations that challenged fundamental assumptions about aerospace capabilities and national security. Her background with Blackout Protocol provided credibility with shadow operations, while her current official status enabled communication with leadership that needed to understand threats without compromising operational security for capabilities that couldn't be publicly acknowledged. The next several hours would determine whether American air defenses could adapt to challenges that rendered conventional tactical doctrine obsolete, while maintaining the secrecy that protected capabilities developed through means that official policy couldn't acknowledge. Kestrel's decision to trust Thorne's explanations had committed her to operations that might determine the outcome of conflicts that existed beyond public awareness, but within the scope of threats that required responses exceeding current military doctrine. The command center buzzed with activity that resembled official military operations, except for the absence of identifying insignia and the presence of technologies that exceeded standard military capabilities. Personnel monitored global communications while tracking contacts that demonstrated capabilities beyond conventional aircraft performance, coordinating responses that required integration of official and unofficial assets. Massive displays showed real-time tracking of anomalous contacts across multiple continents, flight patterns that indicated coordinated testing of air defense networks, while demonstrating technologies that challenged fundamental assumptions about aerospace engineering. The scope of activity suggested systematic preparation for operations that would force acknowledgement of capabilities that official policy couldn't address through normal channels. 17 contacts simultaneously active across North American airspace, reported an analyst whose credentials Kestrel could only guess at. Each demonstrates flight characteristics consistent with enhanced Blackout Protocol technologies, while broadcasting authentication codes that suggest coordination with similar operations from multiple national sources. The implications were clear. This wasn't isolated testing but coordinated demonstration of capabilities that multiple nations had developed using technologies that couldn't be publicly acknowledged. The shadow operations that Thorne represented were responding to similar operations from potential adversaries who possessed comparable capabilities and understood their strategic implications. Official response protocols are inadequate for addressing threats of this magnitude, Thorne explained as she prepared for operations that would coordinate with official military responses while providing capabilities that couldn't be officially acknowledged. Standard air defense systems can't intercept aircraft that demonstrate these performance characteristics, and conventional tactical doctrine doesn't address scenarios where adversaries possess technologies that exceed our official capabilities. Kestrel understood that she was witnessing preparation for conflicts that might determine the future of aerial warfare, while remaining invisible to public awareness, and potentially to senior military leadership that lacked appropriate clearance for understanding the full scope of threats and available responses. The facility's aircraft were being prepared for missions that would demonstrate American capabilities, while maintaining operational security that prevented public awareness of technologies that might be necessary for national security, but couldn't be acknowledged through normal channels. Pilots who officially didn't exist prepared to confront threats, using capabilities that officially didn't exist while coordinating with official units that would bear responsibility for outcomes they couldn't fully control. Your modified Raptor incorporates some of the same technologies we've been developing, Thorne informed Kestrel as they prepared for operations that would test both official and unofficial capabilities against threats that exceeded conventional understanding. The upgrades you've been flying represent integration of enhanced technologies with standard military systems, allowing official units to operate with improved capabilities while maintaining plausible deniability about their sources. The revelation explained the superior performance Kestrel had noticed in her modified aircraft, capabilities that exceeded standard F-22 specifications, while remaining within plausible parameters for official enhancement programs. Her aircraft represented successful integration of advanced technologies with conventional systems, demonstrating that enhanced capabilities could be deployed through official channels while maintaining operational security for their sources. How many official aircraft have been enhanced with these technologies? Kestrel asked, realizing that her modified Raptor might not be unique and that official military capabilities might exceed public understanding while remaining within parameters that official policy could acknowledge. Enough to provide effective response to current threats while maintaining the appearance of conventional capability enhancement, Thorne replied. Official leadership knows their aircraft have been upgraded, but not the full extent of capabilities available or their sources. This provides operational flexibility while maintaining political plausibility for activities that extend beyond normal military doctrine. The careful balance between capability and acknowledgement represented sophisticated understanding of political limitations, while ensuring that operational requirements could be met through means that official policy could support without requiring explanation of sources that couldn't be publicly revealed. Mission briefings began for operations that would coordinate official and unofficial responses to threats that challenged conventional air defense capabilities, while maintaining operational security that protected capabilities developed through means that couldn't be officially acknowledged. Kestrel found herself assigned to coordinate between official units and shadow operations, her unique background providing credibility with both communities, while enabling communication that might be crucial for successful operations. The threats they prepared to confront represented escalation beyond the preliminary testing that had prompted her initial mission, demonstrations of capabilities that would force official acknowledgement of challenges that current policy wasn't prepared to address, while requiring responses that exceeded conventional military doctrine. Remember that official units don't know the full extent of capabilities available, Thorne reminded participants during final briefings. Your role is to provide enhanced performance while maintaining the appearance of conventional operations, allowing official leadership to authorize responses that they understand to be within normal parameters while actually exceeding those parameters through means they don't need to acknowledge. The sophisticated deception was designed to protect official leadership from knowledge that might compromise their ability to authorize necessary operations, while ensuring that operational requirements could be met through capabilities that existed outside normal procurement and oversight processes. Kestrel understood that she was participating in activities that served national security interests, while maintaining the political insulation that enabled those activities to continue. Launch preparations proceeded with precision that matched official military operations, while incorporating capabilities that exceeded standard performance parameters. Aircraft that officially didn't exist prepared to support operations that officially weren't happening while maintaining coordination with official units that would bear responsibility for outcomes they couldn't fully control. As Kestrel prepared her enhanced Raptor for operations that would test the integration of official and unofficial capabilities, she realized that her career had prepared her for this moment, bridging worlds that existed separately for political reasons, while serving operational requirements that transcended conventional military doctrine. The mission she was about to undertake would either demonstrate successful integration of enhanced capabilities with official operations, or reveal the limitations of attempting to address unprecedented threats through means that required absolute secrecy from oversight agencies, and potentially from senior leadership, who lacked appropriate clearance for understanding the full scope of available resources. Takeoff felt different this time, engines producing thrust that pushed beyond standard F-22 specifications, while maintaining the familiar characteristics that enabled her to operate with confidence despite capabilities that exceeded her previous experience. The enhanced systems whispered electronic poetry that included frequencies and capabilities not present in standard aircraft, integration of advanced technologies with conventional systems that provided performance advantages while maintaining operational familiarity. Climbing through altitudes that would position her to observe and respond to threats that exceeded conventional aircraft capabilities, Kestrel could see other aircraft taking similar positions, some bearing official markings, and some without identifying characteristics, coordinated response that drew on resources from both acknowledged and unacknowledged sources, while maintaining the appearance of conventional operations. Ground control provided coordination through channels that included both official military communications and encrypted frequencies that connected her to operations that couldn't be officially acknowledged. The dual communication systems enabled her to maintain contact with official leadership while receiving tactical information from sources that possessed superior intelligence about threats and available responses. All units, this is control. We're tracking multiple contacts approaching North American airspace from several vectors. These contacts demonstrate flight characteristics that exceed conventional aircraft capabilities. Rules of engagement authorize defensive responses using all available assets. The phrasing was carefully constructed to provide authorization for responses that would draw on capabilities beyond standard military systems, while maintaining political cover for leadership that might not understand the full extent of resources being deployed. Official authorization for all available assets included capabilities that leadership didn't know were available, enabling effective response while maintaining their insulation from knowledge that might compromise their ability to provide political support. Wraith, this is Phoenix. Maintain standard communication protocols but be prepared for tactical coordination that extends beyond conventional procedures. The contacts we're approaching have capabilities that will challenge everything you understand about air-to-air engagement. Thorne's warning was timely. The anomalous contacts that appeared on her displays demonstrated flight characteristics that defied conventional understanding of aerospace engineering, while approaching with coordination that suggested systematic testing of American response capabilities using technologies that exceeded current threat assessments. The first engagement would test whether integration of enhanced capabilities with official operations could provide effective defense against threats that rendered conventional tactical doctrine obsolete, while maintaining operational security that protected sources of capabilities that couldn't be officially acknowledged. Contact came without warning, sudden appearance of multiple aircraft that demonstrated capabilities exceeding anything Kestrel had encountered during her career, while behaving with tactical coordination that suggested military training and understanding of conventional engagement protocols. The approaching contacts weren't random intrusions. They were systematic probing of enhanced defensive capabilities using technologies that challenged fundamental assumptions about what was possible in aerial warfare. Her enhanced systems provided targeting information that exceeded standard F-22 capabilities, while maintaining interface characteristics that enabled her to operate with familiar procedures despite performance advantages that rendered her aircraft superior to conventional specifications. The integration of advanced technologies with standard systems allowed her to engage threats beyond normal parameters, while maintaining operational procedures that official oversight could understand and support. Multiple contacts bearing 270, range 40 miles, altitude varying between 38 and 45,000 feet, she reported through official channels, while receiving additional tactical information through encrypted communications that provided intelligence unavailable to standard military systems. Contacts demonstrate flight characteristics that suggest enhanced capabilities beyond conventional aircraft specifications. The careful phrasing provided official leadership with information they could process while avoiding details that might compromise operational security for capabilities they weren't authorized to understand. Her role was to serve as bridge between enhanced operations and official oversight, enabling effective response while maintaining political insulation that protected sources of advanced capabilities. Wraith, you are cleared to engage using enhanced protocols, came the response from Phoenix through encrypted channels. Demonstrate capabilities that will force acknowledgement of superior performance while maintaining the appearance of conventional engagement procedures. The authorization enabled her to reveal the full extent of her aircraft's enhanced capabilities while engaging threats that exceeded conventional defensive scenarios. The engagement would test whether American enhanced technologies could match or exceed the capabilities demonstrated by potential adversaries who possessed similar advanced systems while operating under fewer political constraints. Her first missile launch demonstrated capabilities that exceeded standard AIM-120 specifications, while maintaining the appearance of conventional weapons employment. The enhanced warhead and guidance systems provided performance advantages that enabled successful engagement of targets that might have been immune to standard military weapons, while maintaining plausible explanation for superior effectiveness. Splash 1, she reported as the first contact disappeared from her displays. Engagement demonstrating that enhanced American capabilities could match or exceed those of potential adversaries, while maintaining operational security that protected sources of advanced technologies. The remaining contacts responded with maneuvers that challenged her enhanced capabilities, while demonstrating that they possessed similar technological advantages and understood their strategic implications. The engagement had become a test of enhanced systems against enhanced systems, aerial warfare that existed beyond public awareness, while determining the balance of capabilities that might influence future conflicts. The dogfight that followed tested every aspect of Kestrel's training and experience, while pushing her enhanced aircraft beyond specifications that would have been impossible using conventional systems. G-forces that would have incapacitated standard pilots, maneuvers that would have destroyed conventional airframes, and weapons employment that demonstrated capabilities exceeding public understanding of military technology. Phoenix Wraith. These contacts demonstrate capabilities that match our enhanced systems, she reported through encrypted channels while maneuvering to avoid incoming weapons that exceeded the performance of standard anti-aircraft missiles. Whatever sources they used for technological development appear to be comparable to our own. Copy Wraith. Continue engagement while documenting their capabilities. This intelligence will be crucial for understanding the scope of threats we're facing and the effectiveness of our current countermeasures. The engagement continued for 17 minutes, aerial combat that tested the limits of both technology and human endurance while remaining invisible to public awareness, and potentially to senior leadership that lacked appropriate clearance for understanding the full scope of capabilities being demonstrated. Kestrel's enhanced systems enabled her to survive encounters that would have been fatal using conventional aircraft, while gathering intelligence about adversary capabilities that exceeded previous threat assessments. When the engagement concluded with withdrawal of remaining contacts, American enhanced capabilities had demonstrated effectiveness against similar systems, while revealing the scope of technological advancement that multiple nations had achieved using sources that couldn't be publicly acknowledged. The intelligence gathered would influence development of future countermeasures, while confirming that aerial warfare had evolved beyond public understanding of what was possible. All units, this is control. Contacts have withdrawn beyond tracking range. Preliminary assessment indicates successful demonstration of defensive capabilities against enhanced threats. All participating units return to designated coordinates for debrief and analysis. The official language provided cover for operations that had exceeded conventional military capabilities, while maintaining the appearance of successful conventional response to unusual but manageable threats. Political leadership could claim success in defending American airspace, while remaining insulated from knowledge of the true scope of capabilities that had made that success possible. Post-mission analysis revealed the effectiveness of integrating enhanced technologies with official operations, while maintaining operational security that protected sources of advanced capabilities. Kestrel's performance had demonstrated that carefully selected personnel could operate enhanced systems while coordinating with official oversight that didn't require complete understanding of available resources. Your integration of enhanced capabilities with official protocols exceeded expectations. Thorne informed her during the debrief that occurred at the Shadow facility, while official debriefs were conducted through normal channels. Political leadership can claim successful defense against unusual threats, while enhanced operations demonstrated capabilities that exceeded adversary expectations. The sophisticated coordination had enabled effective response to threats that challenged conventional defensive capabilities, while maintaining the political insulation that protected continued development of enhanced systems through means that official policy couldn't acknowledge. Kestrel had successfully served as bridge between worlds that existed separately for operational security, while serving national interests that transcended conventional military doctrine. "What happens now?" Kestrel asked, understanding that her performance during the engagement had demonstrated capabilities that qualified her for continued participation in operations that existed beyond official oversight, while serving requirements that exceeded conventional military procedures. "Now we prepare for the next phase," Thorne replied, her voice carrying the weight of someone who understood that the engagement they had just concluded was preliminary to challenges that would test the full extent of enhanced American capabilities, while potentially forcing acknowledgement of threats that current policy wasn't prepared to address. The intelligence gathered during the engagement confirmed that multiple nations possessed enhanced aerospace capabilities derived from sources that couldn't be publicly acknowledged, while demonstrating coordination that suggested systematic preparation for conflicts that might exceed conventional understanding of what was possible in military confrontation. American enhanced capabilities had proven effective against similar systems, while revealing the scope of technological advancement that existed beyond public awareness, and potentially beyond the understanding of senior leadership that lacked appropriate clearance for comprehending the full extent of available resources and emerging threats. Kestrel's role in bridging official and unofficial operations had proven successful during preliminary testing, qualifying her for continued participation in activities that might determine the outcome of conflicts that existed beyond public awareness, while serving national security interests that couldn't be addressed through conventional military doctrine. The next phase would test whether American enhanced capabilities could maintain superiority against adversaries who possessed similar technologies while operating under fewer political constraints, and potentially with superior understanding of their strategic implications for future military conflict. The debriefing continued through the night as intelligence analysts processed data from the engagement, while strategic planners developed scenarios for confronting threats that exceeded conventional military capabilities. The information gathered would influence decisions about resource allocation and operational priorities, while maintaining operational security that protected sources of enhanced capabilities from compromise through normal oversight processes. The contacts demonstrated coordination that suggests systematic preparation for operations beyond the preliminary testing we encountered, reported intelligence analysts, whose credentials extended beyond standard military classification levels. Their withdrawal was tactical rather than strategic. They gathered intelligence about our enhanced capabilities while revealing minimal information about their full potential. The implications were sobering. The engagement had been mutual intelligence gathering rather than genuine conflict resolution, both sides testing enhanced capabilities while preparing for confrontations that might determine the balance of aerospace superiority, using technologies that exceeded public understanding of what was possible in military aviation. Estimated time until next phase? Thorne inquired, her voice carrying the authority of someone responsible for strategic planning that extended beyond conventional military doctrine while serving national security interests that couldn't be addressed through normal political channels. 6 to 8 weeks for full deployment of enhanced systems, came the response from analysts who monitored global indicators while tracking development programs that existed beyond public awareness. Multiple indicators suggest coordinated preparation for operations that will test the full extent of American enhanced capabilities, while potentially forcing acknowledgement of threats that current policy frameworks aren't designed to address. The timeline provided insufficient opportunity for developing additional countermeasures, while offering limited time for expanding enhanced capabilities through programs that required absolute secrecy from oversight agencies and potentially from senior leadership who lacked appropriate clearance for understanding the scope of available resources. Kestrel understood that her successful integration of enhanced capabilities with official operations had qualified her for continued participation in activities that might determine American aerospace superiority against adversaries who possessed similar technologies while operating under fewer political constraints than American enhanced operations. The next several weeks would involve intensive preparation for confronting threats that exceeded conventional military capabilities, while maintaining operational security that protected sources of advanced technologies from compromise through normal oversight processes. Her role would continue to bridge official and unofficial operations, while enabling responses that served national security interests beyond the scope of conventional military doctrine. Training intensified as enhanced operations prepared for confrontations that would test American technological superiority against adversaries who possessed comparable capabilities, while potentially understanding their strategic implications better than American leadership that lacked complete awareness of available resources. The preparation occurred parallel to official military activities, while maintaining coordination that enabled integrated response to threats that exceeded conventional defensive scenarios. The facility became a center for developing tactics that integrated enhanced capabilities with official operations, while maintaining political insulation that protected senior leadership from knowledge that might compromise their ability to authorize necessary responses. Kestrel's successful performance during preliminary testing qualified her for advanced training that would prepare her for operations exceeding anything in her previous experience. Enhanced aircraft received modifications that pushed beyond previous performance parameters, while maintaining the appearance of conventional upgrade programs that official oversight could understand and support. The technological advancement occurred through sources that couldn't be acknowledged, while providing capabilities that might be crucial for maintaining American aerospace superiority against threats that rendered conventional systems inadequate. Phase 2 preparation requires integration of capabilities that exceed current classification levels. Thorne explained during briefings that extended beyond standard military protocols. The threats we're preparing to confront possess technologies that challenge fundamental assumptions about aerospace engineering, while demonstrating strategic coordination that suggests systematic preparation for conflicts that might determine future balance of global military power. The scope of threatened confrontation exceeded anything in Kestrel's previous experience, while requiring responses that drew on capabilities developed through means that official policy couldn't acknowledge. Her role would continue bridging official and unofficial operations, while enabling American enhanced capabilities to confront challenges that might determine the outcome of conflicts existing beyond public awareness. 6 weeks of intensive preparation transformed both personnel and equipment while maintaining operational security that protected enhanced capabilities from compromise through normal oversight processes. Kestrel's integration of advanced technologies with conventional procedures became the model for operations that served national security interests, while maintaining political insulation that enabled continued development of resources that exceeded public understanding of American military capabilities. The morning when Phase 2 began arrived with multiple indicators that confirmed the analysis. Enhanced contacts appeared simultaneously across global airspace, while demonstrating capabilities that exceeded preliminary testing, while coordinating with precision that suggested systematic implementation of strategic plans that had been developed through years of preparation, using technologies that challenged conventional understanding of aerospace engineering. Multiple enhanced contacts confirmed across North American, European, and Pacific airspace, reported analysts monitoring global indicators through systems that exceeded standard intelligence capabilities. Coordination patterns suggest systematic testing of enhanced defensive capabilities using technologies that match or exceed our own advanced systems. American enhanced operations activated in response to threats that would test the full extent of available capabilities, while maintaining coordination with official military responses that bore responsibility for outcomes they couldn't completely control. Kestrel prepared for operations that would determine whether American technological advantages could maintain superiority against adversaries who possessed comparable capabilities, while operating under fewer political constraints. The confrontation that was beginning would either demonstrate successful integration of enhanced American capabilities with official operations, or reveal limitations of attempting to address unprecedented threats through means that required absolute secrecy from oversight agencies and potentially from senior leadership who lacked complete understanding of available resources. Phase 2 testing pushed American enhanced capabilities to their limits, while revealing the scope of adversary technological advancement that had occurred through sources that couldn't be publicly acknowledged. The engagements that followed demonstrated that aerial warfare had evolved beyond public understanding, while determining the balance of capabilities that might influence future global conflicts that existed beyond conventional military doctrine. Kestrel's role in these operations would define not only her own career, but potentially the future of American aerospace superiority, in an environment where enhanced technologies rendered conventional tactical doctrine obsolete, while requiring responses that exceeded normal military procedures. The next several hours would determine whether American enhanced capabilities could maintain superiority against threats that challenged fundamental assumptions about aerospace engineering and military conflict. The legacy of Blackout protocol would be tested against enhanced systems that represented decades of technological development, while serving national security interests that couldn't be addressed through conventional political channels. Success would ensure continued American aerospace superiority, while failure might force acknowledgement of limitations that current policy frameworks weren't designed to address. The sky above held answers to questions that exceeded conventional understanding, while demanding responses that challenged the boundaries between acknowledged and unacknowledged capabilities, serving American national security interests in conflicts that existed beyond public awareness, but within the scope of threats that required solutions exceeding normal military doctrine and political oversight.